Namaste and welcome everyone. It is me, Nina Saacks from Yoga Awakening Africa, and I am excited to be chatting with Melanie today. Mel, we kind of like met, I think, you were doing your teacher's training with the Academy of Yoga and Ayurveda, and that's kind of like where I got to find out about you and what you've been up to. Then you joined our yoga retreat, our studio retreat last year, and I got to know even more about you and all the exciting projects that or the exciting project that you are doing now. So I thought maybe we can just start with you giving everyone a little bit of an intro as to who you are, your background, and how you got into this lovely little practice we call yoga. Welcome.
Thanks, Nina. So I guess a good place to start is my yoga journey. I think I started doing yoga in my late teens and when I started university. And it was a bit of a stop-start journey, but I kept finding myself being drawn back. And then I think quite consistently when I moved to Cape Town over 22 years ago, I started actually going to the ashram. I think was really drawn to the style of yoga that is practiced at the ashram, the hatha yoga, as well as exploring yoga as a lifestyle as opposed to just an exercise. Sometimes we see it, and I think over the years, I think 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to deepen that practice. I had been doing a bit of meditation and skilling myself doing various courses, and I thought the immersing myself in the training would really complete that process. And so my intention initially wasn't to teach at all. It was really for myself to really understand the philosophy behind yoga, how to integrate yoga into my life, how to live a more authentic life, I guess. And so that's how I ended up doing the yoga training. And that was great. It took me on a journey over about a year. I think I did the yoga, met some wonderful people. And at the same time, I was really exploring about my own path. I guess doing my seva work as I had seen it then. I've always worked in the crime and violence prevention space around crime and violence, as well as working with children and women as well. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I kind of started trying to actually shift, I guess, my work focus into more trauma-informed, integrative ways of working with survivors and also perpetrators of violence.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And so tell me, like, your background a little bit more working in this field. Like, how long did it span? What were you doing?
So I'm South African, but my parents left South Africa in the 60s when I was a baby. My father was a trade unionist, and obviously at the height of apartheid, it was a very difficult time. So I grew up in Swaziland in quite an unusual environment, I guess, for South African. There was no apartheid, no segregation. But at the same time, there was a very large anti-apartheid movement in Swaziland. So I guess developed my consciousness, I guess, in terms of a sense of justice and social justice in particular. Engaged a lot. My brothers and sisters were very active in the anti-apartheid movement. And then as I grew up, I think that's really shaped me and my choice of career, because I studied law at university in KwaZulu-Natal, and then went on to work on police reform, transforming policing systems, working on systems of accountability in terms of looking at how to democratize the apartheid system to move into a new era.
I
And
remember
so,
when you and Nadia were on retreat, the two of you were saying you guys worked together, and as youngsters, you went in and you thought you were going to like reform this whole police section. I
yeah.
just had a good laugh when you were chatting about that and how you came in, and how everyone, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if you want to share that story.
Yeah, I think a lot of idealism, which was important. I think that's what we needed at the time. But I think also just a huge privilege. I went on to work, on many transitional structures, and then on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, um, which was very powerful. Watching, the restorative justice processes unfolding, and really being exposed to people like the Archbishop. So that was quite profound. And I think that just really grew. I worked at the Human Rights Commission, and then I also worked on with various NGOs looking at police transformation and transforming the criminal justice system. So that kind of went full circle. Initially, doing a lot of policy and research work, but also engaging with people on their experience. Both, I guess, old guard, as we called it then, but also people, victims of police brutality, and people on the other end of the spectrum, and then trying to think of how you shift the system to fit into this new concept of a new South Africa.
And so tell me, Mel, because one of the things that you were chatting about a little earlier was the reason why you wanted to do yoga or get into yoga was because you wanted to figure out or wanted a way to make yoga a lifestyle and not just, be yoga on the mat. How have you found that you've managed to work that in with kind of like your past? Have you managed to like incorporate the two? And how do you take your yoga off the mat?
So I think I've always been drawn to the esoteric, and I think the social justice component, when I think for me, it all kind of fell into place looking at the 8 limbs of yoga, Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, about the different components of how we live, so the spiritual being, which I explore my spirituality actively, that is part of my persona, as I see it. A huge component has been around seva and this. And so I think yoga gave me another education in how to actually integrate those parts, which maybe were a bit compartmentalized in the past. And then I think to a large extent really working on myself and my own transformation, my own sense of purpose, how to live a more integrated and authentic life. So that's really, that yoga journey, I think, has coincided with the process of me shifting a lot of my focus work-wise to healing and transformation interventions, which is, I do quite a bit of that now. I still have to pay the bills with the research and the other work, but I'm definitely more drawn and passionate about the potential to transform, for people to transform themselves and their relationships and their communities.
So, I mean, transformation's been a big word here, and it sounds like that's definitely been a big part of your life. When during like kind of post-apartheid, you were part of the whole transformation process that was going on. A big part, you played a big role in the truth and reconciliation aspects. You talking about your own personal transformation going with yoga, and that it's an ongoing journey. So this idea of like transformation to me is like it's always there. Like it always has to happen. We're always evolving. If there's no transformation, there's no evolution, and we can't learn and we can't grow and we can't move on. So I suppose my question is, like, how do we keep transforming? Like, what do we need to do? What have you seen? Because you've worked so much in this field of transformation. Like, do you see any like key aspects that guide one through like transformation, that you know that you're busy transforming, or going through a process?
So yeah, I think yoga's really helped me quite a lot with that in terms of unpacking that. I mean, I think a big concept around transformation, particularly when you're working in a system that's structurally unequal, um, in a gender context where I work, there's a lot of imbalance of power, of who holds the power in relationships, and we see that play out in the workplace, in people's personal lives. So I think a huge area is a fundamental question: is how do I change? Do I focus on my body? Do I focus on changing my behavior? Do part of myself? And I think that's been really interesting for me when I went into the teacher's training, particularly unpacking the philosophy of yoga, that really provides a really powerful vehicle in seeing a person in their entirety, and trying to focusing on the different limbs of yoga and how we live our life, how to integrate that. So whether it's through Ayurveda, Judo, whether it's about developing your body or your intellect in terms of that, whether it's about, transforming your relationships and the way you behave. So I think I've tried to take all of that on board and then integrate it a lot into the work that I do. I do healing and transformation workshops with victims of violence. I also work in Pollsmoor Prison with perpetrators, and when they come out. So really also looking at the impact of trauma and how that shapes you, and using many of the techniques, breath work and pranayama, somatic movement, which we use to calm the parasympathetic nervous system, trying to understand the mind in terms of the philosophy of yoga, really look at, integrate that in my work. That's been really exciting in terms of looking at different components of the mind. So it's actually been quite an organic process. I'm still learning. That has been, I think, the most powerful lesson is that I shouldn't say learning. I think a lot of it is actually unlearning.
That is a really good point, Mel. It really is. It's kind of like all the wisdom or the knowledge is kind of there, and it's just actually taking away the veils, taking away the layers to see the truth or the authenticity of what is there, of who we are, without all this other baggage that is around. So I like that concept of unlearning. I forgot actually that you'd said, that you do work in the prisons in Pollsmoor, and, you're bringing in the concept of yoga to these, is it the inmates that you're working with there, or is it? Okay.
So currently work with juveniles, which is young men, 18 to 24. And this year we'll be working with the young women as well from that age group. With very traumatized. Prison is a traumatic environment in itself, but obviously people, often you see the cycle of violence play out. People who are perpetrators have been victims at some point in their lives. And working with that, the yoga, the meditation, the breathwork are powerful self-regulation techniques, but also really assist in getting people an opportunity to become more self-aware and more conscious of what they're feeling and what drives them and how they respond to that. So together with other methodologies, we do a lot of creative art methodologies, which is very therapeutic components, storytelling, to almost like unpeel the layers to get to know oneself a bit better. And so in addition to that, I also try and maintain a little yoga studio here at home, which I've set up.
Amazing. I mean, Mel, you just are a phenomenal powerhouse of a woman. It's like, you know, the work that you're doing in research, you know, doing the sever, doing the yoga, the projects that you've on the go. What I wanted to just go back to quickly was the young adolescents that you're working with in prisons. Have you already noticed, you know, like a shift? Do they come up to you and say, you know, I'm feeling better, or I'm feeling, you know, what are the stories? Are there any shifts and changes that you've seen, or is it a very slow, gradual process?
I think it's a really slow process, one, because it's being, you know, in prison and remaining in prison in stark conditions. The guys spend like 90% of their time in a cell with maybe 20 other people. So it's very, very difficult for them to effect the change that they want. So we've started working with them on the outside. But I think what has been quite powerful, even just we do a lot of breath work and slowly introduce meditation techniques. The things that I think have really resonated with them, they love the breath work. They find it really powerful. And we try and understand what's happening to the body when you breathe and what happens to your nervous system. So that, I think, has been really incredible. They do love some of the asanas. I think the beautiful thing about yoga, when you say you're doing a balance, it's just not about a physical balance. And so we try to talk about balancing yourself, your emotions, you know, the left and right side of the brain. And I guess to embody that in an asana becomes something they really grasp. So unfortunately, we're not doing a lot of yoga. I'm trying to get some mats, because we can't do it on the floor. It's just filthy. To come up with a cheap solution for some mats, because for example, this program got 24 guys. I need 24 mats to try and actually give them an opportunity to even do some yoga nidra, which I think would be really powerful. So yeah, I definitely see the benefit of that process. At the end of the course, they're definitely more aware. They have some techniques to manage themselves and their responses. And then hopefully when they come out, they're ready to put that into practice and we can work with them.
Yeah, yeah. Mel, you're also saying that you're continuously learning and growing and evolving. And you said like kind of like one of the things that you are quite passionate about is learning more about the different components of the mind. Like, what are one or two of the things that you've learned that could be really helpful for someone like me or someone listening to know about the mind? Yeah.
So first of all, is simplicity. I really do believe some people are visual. So in prison, for example, we draw it. We show what a traumatized brain looks like. Was a child that's had adverse childhood experience, gross neglect or abuse, and what a normal brain looks like on the MRI, for people to say, look, you can actually see the impact, for example, of trauma. And then looking at how to create new neural pathways, and yoga does that constantly. We learn to self-regulate, we redirect our focus. When we more relaxed and calm, we can access our subconscious and process things better. So we really just talk to them about where they are using the mind. You know, are you stuck in your thoughts? the same thought pattern over and over again. This has happened to me. How do I shift out of that? Can I use my body or my breath to actually shift that? And then where do I take the mind? Where do I go? And so the intellect, for example, building the intellect. That's not academic readings, whatever, but developing oneself, acquiring valuable information and knowledge. So how much time do you actually spend, learning new things, studying new things, exploring new things to develop and gain more information and knowledge that could be useful to you? And then we talk about the sensory aspects as well. So it then becomes a tool which is quite wonderful. The guys will sometimes come in and say, oh, I'm too much in my thoughts. We also explain to them how the amygdala works. And I just love the story because they couldn't say it's quite a hard work, particularly if you're not English speaking or even if you're English speaking. So they call it Amy. And they'll come in and say, Amy just took over today. I had a tantrum. And we'll go like, okay, so how do you bring Amy under control? So, and then they'll say, oh, did you try breathing? Maybe you try to get into your body, doing some movement. So the key thing I think is once people have an understanding of how the body works, how the mind works, providing the techniques is just the next step in being able to.
Yeah. No, I love the way you explain it as well, Mel. Kind of like I love the analogy of Amy instead of the amygdala. That's great because you're giving easier, simpler words for something that is, in a sense, I don't want to say a simple concept because it's not really. It's a lot of science behind it, but something tangible that we can all connect with. And kind of like you were saying, it's all about just understanding, are we having those reoccurring negative thoughts or thought patternings, and how do we take ourselves out of that? And so what I'm hearing you say is that, first it's about awareness, noticing if that happens, or when that's happening, and then changing that thought pattern. And one of the things that I got from you, and I don't know if I understood this right, is that if that's happening is like, can you replace it with something more beneficial, like something that some new learning concept that you could be doing? Or can you shift it with a breathing practice or a yoga practice, something in that regard? So did I get that right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I think I think with our self-awareness has been really critical in terms of what is happening to me. And you do that in yoga. I mean, your entire yoga practice can be meditative, and it just gives you the ability to connect with yourself and what you're feeling and how you're reacting. And then I think the next difficulty we all face is how to shift that. What are the tools, can I shift it? I mean, is it real? And I think that this. What is incredible is that we strictly apply evidence-based practices around behavioral change. Is just more and more research that's coming up on the benefits of you as a tool for behavioral change, trauma release. There's just so much research which is demonstrating the benefits and how one can effectively use that. And so that's been wonderful because I think, whether it's a podcast or you're reading a new book, it's constantly evolving and constantly changing. So, you may not be able to see a chakra, but science is now saying, yes, it does exist. Meridians do exist, and I think for a lot of people that has been difficult because yoga has come with certain, they've been conditioned to thinking of yoga in a particular way or what it is or whatever. So debunking a lot of that, So I won't necessarily say we're doing yoga now. I might just say we're actually going to see how we can use our breath. And then eventually I do start introducing the concepts. And I also work with children. I volunteer for the child projects, sometimes teaching. That is the beauty. I find the children and the young men I work with really love the fact that they can do a tree, they can do a cat cow. It's so real to them, what they're actually doing, and it becomes attractive. So we, with the children, the Earth Child does amazing stuff, which I've learned from them and then taken it into my other work. Is they tell stories using the asanas, like the boy who cried wolf. You actually do different poses as you explaining the story. What is it, like a moral story or parable, which has a message or learning, and really using yoga in that way.
Amazing. Yeah, brilliant. And I love how you bring in all the components. And I think this is why, like, I can see your yoga journey like unfolding and growing, because you're like just at the beginning in a sense, but with your amazing background on, the field that you've been in for so long, and having worked with, in all these sensitive areas, with severely traumatized humans, and now having this tool and understanding, that of yoga, and bringing that, and offering more a sense of like trauma informed yoga to the public. There is like a lot of like trauma informed yoga out there, but I don't think there are many people who are teaching it who have such a depth of understanding as you do. So I'm really, really excited to like see how and where that's going to go, because I just think you have you understand it on another level that most of us can't. And I don't know, are you as excited as I am to see where this is going to be going for you? I mean, I am.
Well, it's been a bit weird because I must say my greatest teachers have been children. Honestly, that was I got an opportunity to do some work with children on spiritual education, and it started the journey of don't tell, don't teach, listen, and I think that the yoga teaches you humility. You have to embody that to be authentic to the teachings of yoga. And so working with children, and even in communities that are very vulnerable, I think I'm constantly aware of those power dynamics and the lack of equality, and how to manage that in a way that I'm not coming in and imposing and teaching. I'm not as someone said, I'm not the imperialist who's coming in to colonize you. I'll teach you something new. So that's been really important for me. I have to keep my child in check constantly. It's a long journey. I think it's just beginning. And every year or every few months it changes. Someone else comes along and introduces something new.
And that again speaks to this idea of transformation and evolution. It's never just static. We're never just learning a thing and that's the way it's going. There's always evolving, learning, growing, and I suppose that is, in a sense, like what yoga is. Mel, I mean, there's so many projects that you are busy with and that you're a part of, and you've got your studio at home, you working with the guys in the prison. So if anyone has spare yoga mats lying around, they should definitely get hold of you, or if anyone wants to donate. But you also working with empowering women, from what I understand. Like, what project have you decided to start in that field?
Yeah, so about the same time as actually before I was approached to work with another NGO, integrating a new methodology and a trauma-informed approach in the restorative justice we're doing in prison. I had been running workshops for women, initially in Manenberg and then later in Mowbray, Claremont, with women from all over the Cape Flats on 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 transformation and healing. That's what we ended up calling it. And we started with a blank slate and what what do you need, you know? And it's kind of evolved into a program which I've now run a few times. And the beauty of the program is it's self-led. It really debunks a lot of styles of empowerment and facilitation. It's not psycho. It's, you know, we don't claim to be doing therapy. We're not equipped. I'm not trained to do that, but we offer a space for to go on a journey of healing, a safe space and tools to do that. So we've run that a few times, and the amazing thing about that is that once the women come out of that process, and I do think it's the universe has just sent so many people who've tagged onto it. So I have a coach that's volunteered that coaches some of the young women who came off that, and then developed a partnership with another organization that's actually empowering women through sewing skills. So one of the beneficiaries from the program who was unemployed has gone into that program now, earns a salary. And then I decided, well, let's try combine these two things. So we came up, they need products to make. So they started running a cut, make, and trim business. And I said, okay, make me some yoga bags, you know, and that way I can pay you, and you get some funding into the project to pay the woman, and then I can try and sell the yoga bags, and any profit goes back into the NGO to do more trauma-informed workshops. So that is my latest venture. I've called it my Sever project because I'm giving, but I'm giving people an opportunity to give as well to something meaningful. So and it kind of make your yoga conscious, you know. So the yoga bag's really not an accessory. It's more like a statement of, you know, I see this could be my Sever supporting this project. I bought this bag and I've actually helped a woman take home bread for the month, you know. So that is a new venture for me on the side. And yeah, I'm hoping that grows, yeah, because it kind of tries to bring it full circle.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love it. I think you're a phenomenal human. I think the work that you have done, that you are doing, and that you will be doing is so, so valuable. I'll definitely pop your links down in the description below. So if anyone wants to get hold of you, get you yoga mats, get yoga bags from you that they can sell on to their studios or friends, or just gift to someone special, then at least they'll be able to get hold of you and do that. Apart from that, any last kind of like thoughts or closing ideas for someone who's like wanting to start on a yoga journey? Like, what should they do? What advice would you have? Maybe someone who's been like maybe a little bit more traumatized. I mean, we get so many different levels of trauma, so we don't have to be specific. But maybe someone who's just been too scared or too nervous to get into yoga. Like, what would your thoughts be?
Well, I think that's what I loved about the course, not giving you free advertising. Was that it was paced
Academy of Yoga, now you're ready.
was paced over a period of time. And so even if someone decided, you know, I'm really interested in the philosophy of yoga, or doing one module at a time, or doing a short course on breath work, you know, and I think it's quite important of finding a studio or place that resonates with so much diversity, so many different types of yoga. Yoga's become very commercialized. And it, you know, you might need to try a few of those, you know, and to definitely, I think for me, it's a journey. It's just constantly growing and evolving and taking on new dimensions. And I think that has been, I think, the most powerful thing for me. It started off me wanting to lead a more authentic life. And I think where I am now, my mantra every day is, I know nothing. It's just you're just constantly acquiring, or as I would say, unlearning old habits to rediscover yourself. And that has been so liberating. So liberating.
Amazing. Awesome. Love it, Mel. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I know it wasn't the easiest to start off. We had a few little bumps and glitches to get us together, but we are here now. So thank you so much for being here and having this chat with me.
Thanks, Nina. Take care. Namaste.